Howdy folks, Doc here with Last Best Tool, and today we're going to be talking about hacksaws. There are all kinds of different forms of hacksaws, but basically the standard hacksaw is just a metal cutting version of the old standard bow saw that was for wood cutting. A couple of basic parts. Usually has some sort of a frame, and that frame you can walk out for a couple of different sizes. Right now 10 and 12 inches are the most popular length of hacksaw blades. Generally there's a tensioner, there's a grip. This is called a pistol grip. It's probably the most common angled, but of course we also have the straight grips. I'll get into that in a sec. And then it has after the tensioner, generally a way that the blade can be rotated, and generally the average is about 50 degrees. So there's basically a 90 degrees and a 50 degrees, depending on what you're trying to cut or what the workspace is. This is a classic, an old Craftsman. I've had this thing forever. I'm not a big fan of wing nuts. I think we've transcended those in hacksaws, but they are pretty easy to work with. Very simple design. A little bit of a spring loading when you tighten this down, so the tip does keep the blade tension, or the bend in the tip keeps the blade tension pretty high. This one's also kind of a vintage Craftsman. It allows you to adjust the blade tension easily here by turning that. Tightens this rod here, goes into a pivot, into a cantilever basically, and then snugs up the blade. The blade is held on here by two wing nut screws, and then the tension is a separate mechanism. This is something that a lot of people didn't realize, is that these tubular designs had basically storage for another hacksaw blade inside them. It also made them rattle when you were using them. This is Snap-on's general hacksaw. They have one a little more advanced. It's kind of like this guy, a little more like that guy there. I like this again because of the grip. And I'll show you why. If you look at these three grips, the angle here is the steepest, and that to me makes the most sense. As you start to tilt the angle away from the blade, or make your hand more in line with the blade, you move away from being able to use the bones in your forearm as kind of a straight through mechanism. Now obviously the push and pull isn't supposed to be super hard, but we do use these pretty hard. And the more it's vertical, the better to me this feels than as it kind of leans out. And then finally, when we go out to kind of the main topic of this, is kind of the classic small hacksaw. And this is what I want to talk most about. There are tons of different designs. They have different features. They've got different grips, different ramps, different ways of holding the blade. This one, to me, has a couple of good features, but one of the worst in a lot of cases. I don't mind the handle. It is grippy. It's got a great thumb ramp, which I think is important, especially a textured one. I wouldn't mind a little more textured there. The blade gap here is pretty small compared to some of the others, and it's got just this archaic screw design where you have to get a Phillips screw, and then it just pinches the blade, which means the blade can easily loosen up and pop off. It slides into the handle, but it is stopped. In fact, it's stopped back here, which means you are limited in the positioning of the blade. But again, Kobalt makes inexpensive tools. Here's a classic Stanley. In fact, there's two Stanleys here. This one does have a through hole in the back of the handle, so you can put the blade at any point. Why that's important? This one's really short here, but you might wear out this part of the blade. You can just slide it down and go again. Or sometimes people want to reach out into a small hole, depending on what they're cutting. Obviously, these are originally designed for metal, and basically we kind of or the popularization came in the late 1800s for the hacksaw, kind of moving away from a wood blade. And a lot of the blades actually back then, because they were trying to cut metal with small teeth, they were super brittle. And when they were brittle, they snapped easy. So if you notice the teeth on these, the teeth tend to lean back. I've got one that's, maybe you can see it here. The teeth are directional. And if they're directional, that means they have a cutting preference. And that cutting preference with a hacksaw on these, excuse me, these aren't pointing back. These are pointing forward. I'll show you what's pointing back. So basically it's designed as a push, and what allows that to happen is you're grabbing the blade by the tip. If you try to do that here, this blade just bends and will snap. So you can really only use a forward pushing hacksaw within the envelope of what's holding the blade. However, for a lot of things, if you're cutting PVC, plastic, little fine work, maybe even some finish work, totally fine to be out there. Just be aware of that limitation. This is really the cutting area, so that's the area to think about in terms of the space, because that limits what you can cut. Although you're generally not going after these things with a, some super big, through pipe, because that's about as far as you can cut. Milwaukee. This one I really like. I wish they had a textured thumb ramp. It does have a nice big space there. You can see that's quite a bit more than this Stanley here. It does have a contained handle, which means that the blade here can only fit in a certain part. But it does, if you pop this free here, allow you to quickly move the blade toolless. The attachment is only at the front. That's okay, because that's how it's designed to be used. And here you can really see the forward-facing teeth. That means the push stroke is really your cutting stroke. In contrast to, say, a sawzall blade, and that's what these are here, just also to show you the different kind of popular shapes or popular teeth. All these are 4 inches. This one's 24 teeth per inch. This one's 10 teeth per inch, and this one's looks like 18 teeth per inch. But all of them here point backwards. So this is designed on the pull. And why? When you're using it with a, something big like a hacksaw here, if it was designed to really have the most force on the push, it would probably snap the blade. So it's really doing the cutting on the pull, and then when it pushes, this just kind of glides into this part up here just glides into the workpiece, and then it grabs on the way out. This is another Stanley, old one, or older. I don't like this at all. It's got a bad retention. It's got, even though it's a skeletonized here, it's a lousy handle. It just wants to rotate around in your hand. It's kind of hard to hold on to because your fingers fall into this and twist it. Little tiny bite, just a fail. But I keep these things often, things like this, in my car toolkits or in my truck toolkits to kind of handle, hopefully, minor emergencies. This one here is one of my favorites. The way Snap-on approached this is they actually have the tension, or the grabbing of the blade is actually taking place out here through a mechanism that cinches it up against a kind of a holding mechanism inside the handle. So this is actually free out here, which means it's not grabbing it at this point, but it has a pretty solid guide. You can see right there. And that guide seems to hold it strong enough. This is a kind of an integrated thumb ramp and tensioning. It's very easy to move this around. So if you end up cutting a small area and just wear the blade there, you can just quickly move it just like that. Continue like a little bit more when you get to the end. can just reverse it if you want. You know, it's going to be, if you look at the teeth at this point, you know, if here, the direction, you want to be a little careful. So like if you see this one, if I had it here, you can see that the teeth are pointing back, and then if I flip it, now they're pointing forward. With real fine teeth, I don't notice it too much, but if you're using coarser teeth, it's going to have a bigger thing, and you can see here, I've done it backwards according to this for the handle. I haven't noticed a huge difference if I'm trying to salvage the last little bit of a blade, but for performance, definitely be aware of that. A small aluminum handle, skeletonized here, so fairly lightweight, and of course the blade can move through the handle quite easily, and I've had good luck with this. Not bad. I think it was like 20 bucks, but most of these are like $5, so that's one of the comparisons. Next thing I wanted to show you, I store my hacksaw blades kind of like this. I'll keep them together. Got all kinds of different ones, and I just throw one bolt through it with a wing nut. I haven't found that they lined up well enough for a second one here, but it just keeps them organized, and then it's very easy to get that right back once I've selected a new one. There are also blade holders. I'll show you some of these, and these are using the sawzall type blades, the reciprocating saw blades. This is a snap-on handle. It's really slippery. I don't really care for it, and kind of an archaic way of holding the blade, but it does allow you a lot of choice in blades, and in fact that's one of the things I've got here is my blade sets. Keep them in containers like this. They're different for cutting all kinds of different materials. I also use a bunch of reciprocating saws, but longer blades, pruning blades. You know, if you're out doing garden work, nail embedded wood. I like Diablo blades. I've got some special purpose ones I'll show you with carbides, diamonds, shorter, smaller ones. But I like to use them in these handles. This is the snap-on handle. It's way expensive. I don't think this is the right design. This may be for a screwdriver. And I don't think a screwdriver handle is right for these. Remember, as you're tilting your hand up versus holding it this way, when you tilt it, you lose a lot of strength. Imagine if you punched somebody that way. You'd break your wrist. Instead, you rotate it and then align this, you know, the primary knuckles with your forearm bones to transfer the force, keep it on bone. Here, you've just twisted it to the wrist. So precision work, it's fine, but nothing for a lot of grinding. But you can get all kinds of wonderful blades for these in different lengths. This one will take any length. This is a Milwaukee folding one here. These are designed for 6-inch blades. I carry these in cars as well. The button both releases it and locks it. I don't know how much I trust that mechanism, and it's really hard to get the blades out sometimes. They can jam in like that. There we go. This one's behaving now on camera. Oh, there we go. So you can swap them out, but they're super duper handy, and you can put all kinds of different blades in. So I actually carry a set of blades and a handle in my work or truck tool kit. This is my favorite though, and they don't make it anymore. It's in Milwaukee, and they use exactly the same the blade holding point as they did on their sawzalls. They're, you know, with a twist lock, really strong. It's threaded here, so I could put it on a longer rod if I wanted to use it for pruning or something else. Nice handle, good grip, good texture, good thumb ramp, very fast to, you know, put things in and out just like that. And I don't have to worry about it coming apart. In fact, with this particular one, I measured with a magnet some of these, like this snap-on. You can see the magnet sticks to it. So this is basically an overmolded plastic frame on top of a metal. I tried to figure that out here. You can see the magnet sticks, still sticking. So it goes to about right here. So that's the rod, which is exactly what's inside the Sawzall. But anyway, a couple of different things to think about when you're working with, I'll use these two, working with these kinds of blades. This is designed, you can see that the teeth pull back, maybe, if you can catch that or not, or lean back. So this is designed as a draw stroke, not a push stroke. And a lot of good good saws are designed for a pull stroke, you know, or drawing it back. So that's okay, but you can get all kinds of great different blades and different lengths and different teeth for all sorts of different cutting chores. Just remember, it's not driving forward; it's pulling back. I'm actually rubbing this on my hand. This is a cast iron diamond grit blade. These are amazing if you've got super hard metals. And what they actually, kind of interesting what they're for, is obviously cutting really hard metal. And cast iron was what kind of the hacksaw was originally designed to cut back in the 1800s. And the cast iron pipe was very hard to work with conventional steel, so they used incredibly hard and, it turns out, brittle high carbon steels. So they would shatter, they'd snap, kind of dangerous. Well, this is a neat throwback to it, where it's actually the same super high quality Milwaukee blade steel with a diamond grit coating. So it's really actually fairly smooth, but you know, and this is trying to cut into wood. I can score it, but where it shines is trying to go into super hard metal. So there's lots of choices with hacksaws. Good solid one. This is probably the heaviest, whereas this is the lightest, if that matters to you. The snap-on tends to be on the lighter side. The Kobalt, I think, has a good handle, but again, a really short workspace, and I don't like having to find a screwdriver and then trying to adjust this, you know, especially if I need a wrench to hold that end of it as well. I just think we're way past that. The Milwaukee, as usual, is probably a little overbuilt, but it's really a good solid system. If you pry that up, it's probably not a bad idea to wear gloves while you're doing this stuff. By the way, if you're interested in gloves, these are my new likes here. They're Milwaukee's. I can't remember if they're deer skin or goat skin. Maybe they say here. Goat skin leather. You can use this to operate your phone on your your knuckles. They have them on both. I've had marginal success, but it is there. But they're a nice, good, solid work glove. Fit great. I think they were around 20 bucks. You can get cheaper. These have really lasted, you know, for a lot of chores that I've been doing. But anyway, once you grab the blade and align it, it's easy to flick down and tighten here, but prying it loose is a little tough, but it's super fast. Definitely costs just a little bit more than the others because of the mechanism, but it's probably worth it if you want a good solid hacksaw handle. And then let's see, oops, line it up right here. Drop it in there. Something like that. There we go. Anyway, good solid one. Anyway, that's kind of the hacksaws. Try a bunch of them. Think about the handles, think about the angles, think about the purchase on these things, think about the security of the bit, or of the blade, whether or not you've got the through hole to adjust. But I think they're worth hanging on to, even if they're pretty cheap, for just a little bit of work that they might do, almost disposable. And then start learning about the different hacksaw blades and the different types, grits, or the teeth, and build out your collection. Hope this helps. Doc out.